Like a macho heel, turn like a muscle. If you sell a lot of tomatoes, I'ma keep a couple models. Ooh, and you may call me HBK. When I'm tuning up the vein, you best be getting in my way. Ooh, yeah, I'm degenerate, I love it, yes, I love it. If you wait down with that, then I got two words for you, suck it. Too sweet, put your fangs up. Too sweet, hold another cup. Let's be busy, 23, got me feeling way too sweet. Too. With a big stand like Stone Cold with a few beers. Play the game, I end the game, I'm champion, I'm Triple H. Undertaker, I'm your maker, bury the brother like Kane. Ooh, 1-3, hit the tombstone, hit the choke slam on face. Ooh, yeah, like a macho heel, turn like a muscle. If you sell a lot of tomatoes, I'ma keep a couple models. Ooh, and you may call me HBK. When I'm tuning up the vein, you best be getting in my way. Ooh, yeah, I'm degenerate, I love it, yes, I love it. If you wait down with that, then I got two words for you, suck it. Too sweet, put your fangs up. Too sweet, hold another cup. Let's be busy, 23, got me feeling way too sweet. Round with a big stand like Stone Cold with a few beers. Play the game, I end the game, I'm champion, I'm Triple H. Undertaker, I'm your maker, bury the brother like Kane. Ooh, 1-3, hit the tombstone, hit the choke slam on face. Ooh, yeah, like a macho heel, turn like a muscle. If you sell a lot of tomatoes, I'ma keep a couple models. Ooh, and you may call me HBK. When I'm tuning up the vein, you best be getting in my way. Ooh, yeah, I'm degenerate, I love it, yes, I love it. If you wait down with that, then I got two words for you, suck it. Too sweet, put your fangs up. Too sweet, hold another cup. Let's be busy, 23, got me feeling way too sweet.
Welcome everyone to your longest running Australian wrestling podcast, Wrestle Radio Australia. I'm your host, Todd Eastman, 10 years strong now, and I am joined tonight by, it's a different show this week because young Jeff and Lachlan are off in Canberra. At the moment, they'd be doing WrestleBrania. So if you're in Canberra and you're missing out on WrestleBrania, what are you doing with yourselves? Aside from that, tomorrow night, go to Slam if you're in Canberra. There's 1,500 people already there. You might as well join them. The man that I've got filling in, not so much filling in, but the only reason he came on is because he agreed he would come on if Lachlan wasn't here. He if you couldn't see it while the credits were playing, but he was just patting his dog very evilly, like a Bond villain.
He's still here.
He's still here. He's below the camera. There you go. Edward Dusk, how are you, mate?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm better now talking to you.
Yeah, aren't we all?
I wanted to have you on because really you've had like a massive year, but it's sort of been sort of under the shadow of sort of the monolith of Delta, when everyone talking about Delta and all that. Meanwhile, you've at MCW have been like cooking with the Sacrament idea and all of that sort of stuff. Did you think that this was the way 2023 was gonna like pan out for you? Sort of like, because the strength of the whole idea of the Sacrament and your 3-match series of Brooksy, like that main evented the last show of the year. That's a hell of an accomplishment when you're thinking about there's no real titles on the line, there's no real like juice in the game, so to speak, but it was a massive draw card for it.
I didn't expect it to become what it did, what it has. But I think once I definitely made the effort to put as much as I could into it, and the idea from the beginning was very much see where it goes, we'll see what happens. It's something a little different for MCW, for like wrestling in general, to kind of take it normally, like if you go, we're going to give a wrestler a specific match kind of thing, it's normally something a bit more basic, it's Kurt Angle's gold medal challenge or something like that, whereas we put a lot of effort into making it look a lot different, where I created like the alarm that goes off at the start with the rules being broadcasted, and we worked hard, myself and the production team we have, to light the Thornbury Theatre differently. So it would, and even like working with our camera crew to film it differently. So it would be presented as something that was separate from everything else. It was my own little Dusk universe.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, I didn't expect it to be main eventing the show at the end of the year. let alone 2. We main evented high stakes as well.
Yeah, you did.
During the year. So it was definitely something that once Brooksy and I came together, that I think it really kind of blew up a lot more than what we thought it might in the beginning. But I'm very, very proud of what it grew into and what it became, and the story that I got to tell with Adam. Because I think with everything else going on and having like Delta and Jarvis telling their amazing story, we had Mitch and Buddy at the start of the year, while we've also had Tommy and Slex telling their story, then their rivalry with the Perea, and now obviously Slex moving. Like, we've had a year full of stories. So having this through line of really just the one all year long, and feel that we did a good job of building it as the months went on to a perfect crescendo, is something I'm very, very proud of to have done.
Because I remember when it was first started happening, there were people in the chat when we were talking about the shows and sort of stuff, like somewhat criticizing certain things, and I remember distinctly going, just let them cook, because I can see they're doing something, they're going somewhere with this, just let them like develop. Just the fact that you did the hourglass on the screen during the match, I thought was a brilliant touch, because normally if it's like a promotion or something like that, they would just put like a standard clock.
Yes, no, I don't want a clock.
Exactly. It's that to me is that doesn't fit the character.
I'm very specific on my aesthetics.
Yeah.
And an hourglass fits them. But I can remember that exactly. I think little things like that at the beginning, where we just kind of stayed true to what we had thought up, is why it worked. Because I remember the criticisms being of like, why not just a big timer? Why is it an hourglass? I don't know how much time is left. How is, like, what am I meant to do with this? And I think it's something that happens in wrestling a lot, where people that don't want to just watch wrestling as a TV show or a movie or a performance, they want to be able to sit in their chair and feel very smart and go, oh, but I know why this is happening. I know where it's going. I read the dirt sheets. They overanalyze everything. Why isn't it a timer? Like you said, well, it wouldn't fit, would it? The hourglass fits the look, the vibe, the aesthetic, whatever word you want to use. I don't know how much time's left. That adds a lot of drama, doesn't it? Because you don't know.
Yeah.
You have to watch the sand fall. So the critiques of like, well, why wouldn't you just do this? The answer was just such an easy, like, why would you?
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things where after we'd done a couple and we just stayed true to the course, a lot of those little nitpicks just fell to the wayside. Whether they just stopped yelling about it or just accepted it, I'm not sure. But I think it all worked out in the end when people just went, all right, well, I'll just accept this presentation for what it is.
Yeah. I like to your point, I remember this is years ago when I was at Riot City. We were in a rumble, and it was supposed to be, I think it was a 25-man rumble, and we had 2 extra surprise people, and somebody in the front row like complained. Well, didn't complain. Well, complained. It was like, well, that's 27 people. You said 25, and I couldn't help myself. I broke character and turned around, and go, are you really complaining about 2 extra people? This is your big complaint. And then I sort of woke up to it, and I got to turn around and get back to it. But it's just like, what is your complaint here? You just enjoy it. Be in it.
I think that's where, like, I think things like Twitter or X, people, I think, ruin the enjoyment for themselves in general. It happens I feel like everyone has a forum to announce their opinion. It's like everyone jumping online to give their movie reviews, or whatever it might be. But you've got to have like something to critique. You've got to have something negative to say, because God forbid someone just go, I liked it, and they'll go, but why? Because this doesn't make sense. And you could just say, well, I enjoyed it. I don't know what more to throw at you. You know, so that's a great example of like, well, why you said 25? Why is there 27? Why not? Are you mad?
Yeah.
Like, you got two
Why
extra
are you
guys.
mad? Yeah. Yeah.
You
We
didn't
gave
see
you
that
more.
coming, did you? Bit of a
No, we
bit
gave
of-
you more.
But
It's like
the
you
old
ordered a
adage of-
medium fries and we gave you a large. What's the problem here? You
no
got a
one
large
goes
fry.
back and says, "Hey, I didn't order a large.
No, you take it and you're happy with it.
Just enjoy it."
Was it when you started the whole Sacrament thing, was this you going to management and sort of pitching the idea, or were they like, we have this idea, what do you think?
There was an original idea that was brought to me of like, we have this, we want to do like a special match for you. We're thinking it'd be like no DQ, and we'd have like a time limit, you know, or something that happens to signify that it's, you know, that it's happening. And then they said, take that, go away, and bring back what you think that looks like for you. So it was like a nice, like just like the outline of a picture. Like, we would like something like this. What does it look like to you? So I went away and kind of came up with what we'd call it, what it would look like. I put together like a document where I explained
do them all the time.
why it's called the Sacrament. What does that have to do with Edward Dusk? What does it look like? And did up like a mock-up of like what the arena would look like. You know, how does the announcement look? And then I made a rough cut version of the Sacrament intro that plays. Of like, and then this would play, and then we could do this and that. So I brought that back and said, this is what I think it would look like. And it was very much a moment where I think they realized how much I kind of had like in my head for it. And we kind of met halfway, which I think is a lot of creative things of like, if you bring something to someone and they kind of give you, you know, 10%, you go, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Whereas the more you can kind of bring to the table, I think the more it's going to make someone want to invest in the idea that you have as well.
Yeah.
And like I said a moment ago, I think that once we invested in it, it worked. Whereas I think if I had half-assed putting together the idea, it wouldn't have worked. And I could have put everything into it, and if MCW kind of just went, we'll do this, it wouldn't have worked. But when I went all in, and they went all in, and also like,
it worked. If they'd have said, oh, well, that's a cool idea, but how about we just do this? Maybe you wouldn't have had your whole heart in it either. So then it wouldn't have. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those things. I'm writing something at the moment about just what booking is really like, because I know everyone at home is just like, oh, it's easy to do. You just do this, you do this, you do this, and they don't think of all that people are actually people. They're humans. They're not just the whole. They're not toys that you can just go, this guy will fight this guy and it'll be great. Because you've got to have people that are invested in what they want to do. Because I always feel that you're going to get the best out of them if they're invested in it themselves. If you're just going, I need you to do this and this and this, just go out and do it. You're not going to get the all of them. And you can tell when someone's not fully into something.
Oh, you absolutely can. I think that is a part of wrestling that people kind of, maybe not forget is the wrong phrase, but maybe aren't privy to, is you could come up with a fantastic idea and bring it forward and say, hey, I want you and you to do this feud. This is the story I have for you. And then at the end, this happens, and they both turn and go, I don't like it. And you can't, and you could sit there and go, well, too bad. That's what's happening. But they're probably not going to give you everything they have, or they might hate it and go, yep, absolutely, boss, let's do it. And then 6 months later, you're like, this isn't working, and they both go, look, we'll be honest, we don't really think it's very good. And you kind of think, well, you could have said this 6 months ago.
Yeah. That's the one thing I've always disliked. Like, if you don't like something, just tell me and I'll think of something else. It's easiest thing to do is just think of someone else.
And like, it's not always that black and white, you know? And I guess that's exactly what you'd be writing about, right? Like, there is a struggle to it that comes with, because this is like, they could have come to me and said, this is what we'd like you to do, and I could have just been the guy that said, I don't like it.
Yeah.
And moved on.
Yeah.
But
when am I winning a belt? I got an idea. Put the belt on me.
But I think that's where I think Jarvis and Delta have done a tremendous job of telling the story based around the championships, and not just, I want to be champion and you've got the belt, so I'm going to take the belt. Like, you have characters that are motivated to do the things that are true in their heart of hearts, and the belt is an allegory or a MacGuffin for that. You know, Jarvis doesn't want to beat Delta for the women's championship because he wants to be women's champion. He wants to beat her for it so she doesn't have it, because it means something to her.
Yes.
And that's where, like, if you look at the start of the year and you've got the story of Delta rising up to face Jess Troy, and they have this amazing 30-minute Iron Man match, and Delta overcomes and becomes champion. She has worked and achieved the mountaintop, and then Jarvis sweeps in and steals it away from her. It's not about Jarvis being women's champion. If your takeaway from that feud is, why is a man women's champion? You've missed the point. Because he's not winning it to be controversial. He's winning it to take something from Delta. So then, in turn, when you get to the match where Delta takes both the belts from him, it is, yes, Delta is a dual champion. Yes, Delta is women's champion and Intercommonwealth champion. But now she has done it to him, because he went and won the Intercommonwealth belt that means something to him. The women's title to him is a prop. It's a trophy he got beating Delta, and he's ran away from it. But now she chases him down and takes the thing he cares about. And now she's got back the women's belt that means so much to her, and now she's achieved something new in achieving this other championship. So it is winning titles, but it's not just, I am champion, I beat you for championship, now I am champion.
Yeah, his prime motivation was to make her unhappy.
Yes, and that's essentially what it is, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, when we took, because there was massive arguments in the discussion about it when we when we review the shows, and I remember saying, look, if you don't think in the end the money is in Delta beating him and holding up that title, you're crazy. If you think that this is just like let this, like I keep saying this, let the story play out. You don't leave when Thanos does the click. You wait and see what happens afterwards. What was that?
I was going to say that's. I was going to basically rant, and you summarized it a lot better than I would have. Of like, that moment of like releasing like Avengers and then saying, right, now you have to wait a year for the payoff. There is no way that doesn't end in a happy ending.
Yeah.
Like, you go see 1,000 movies and one of them ends negatively or on a downward note, right? And I'd say 50% of that is probably because there's a sequel coming that will be the resolution. That's storytelling. And where it might not always be as simple as, loses the champion, is cheated out of the championship, and then down the line wins the championship back fairly. Because in wrestling, it might be the heel getting their comeuppance a different way, through another means.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that in that moment, like at the end, it's going to be an ending. But just because you don't like what happens in the first 20 minutes doesn't mean the ending's not going to be good. It's just that wrestling doesn't happen in an hour or 2 hours. You might have to wait 3 or 4 weeks, or in an independent level where we're running 1 or every 2 months, you might have to wait 4 or 6 months. And it feels wrong that something happens on a show and that's all you get. But the draw is to then watch what happens on the next one. We're not trying to run a show where you go, well, I never need to watch MCW again. I have seen it all. We want you to have the hook, so you go, well, I need to come back. I need to see Adam Brooks beat Edward Dusk. I need to see Delta beat Jarvis. I need to see what happens after the Pereira have won the tag team championships. Like, you want those things.
Yes.
Those hooks. It's what wrestling is all the time, but I think, again, people rush to have an opinion on something so quickly that they need to critique everything.
Yeah. See, that's a difference too, because I know that personally, I'm a heel heavy booker for the mere fact that I'm always I want them to come back to find out what's going on. I want them to come back to go, look, he didn't get him this month, but he's going to get him next show, and I don't want to miss that. There are other promotions that at the end of every show, it's always happy, and it's always like that. I was like, because we like to send the crowd home happy. I was like, yeah, you can do that, but I just find that's diminishing returns. I find if you hold them off, and then you give them that big, okay, you've been waiting 3 or 4 shows, bang, here you go. And I always find that for me anyway, that seems to pay more dividends than, like, at the end of every show, whether or not the heel wins or not, the babyface is still going to be smiling at the end of the show. For me, that's just, I don't think that creates a massive need to come back again, because they got their fix, if that makes sense.
I once had it put to me as like withdrawals and deposits, where every show you should withdraw as much as you deposit. Or if you're going to take a big withdrawal, you need to be planning to make a big deposit, or vice versa. So that's where, when you're booking the show, you have that in your mind. So if you know that, say, right, in our main event, the heels are going to win, the babyface is losing, which is a withdrawal. So we got to make sure that earlier on in the night, we make a big enough deposit so that when the crowd leaves, they feel the way like we want them to. Like, if we want them to feel defeated and go, man, like, what's going to happen next? You know, like leaving the theater after Avengers, right?
Yeah.
We need to make sure that we book that show accordingly. Or if you go, look, we're going to have a big ending that's on a down note, but we don't want them to leave depressed. So maybe the rest of the show, or there's a moment in the show earlier in the night that's a big up moment, so that even though we're finishing on a down, you go, man, I'm so bummed that happened at the end. But you know what was sick? This thing that happened earlier in the night.
That's exactly right.
What you do is every babyface wins. Halfway through the show, the crowd's been deposited so much, they'll check out.
Yeah,
or vice
no, he's just going to win.
If all the heels are winning, halfway through the night, the crowd's probably going to go, well, I'm going to stop cheering because I'm kind of bummed out now. I'm not really enjoying it.
It's sort of a microcosm to like a match is sort of a microcosm to a show. Whereas like if the fans are cheering for the babyface to come back and he doesn't, they're eventually going to stop cheering because that's not working. We don't know how to help this guy because we keep trying to cheer for him and it's not working. He's not coming back at all. Every time we start going like the slow clap or the Bobby, something like that, and he's not feeding up to it, why we're not helping here? So we're just going to sit and watch.
And that's where, like, I think when there's nothing wrong with planning a match in advance, and some people want to plan it to the most meticulous detail, and if that's your thing, you know, like, it's not a modern thing. We all know about DDP famously writing it all out, right? Nothing wrong with it. But there is also that other side of it where we might have not planned for a comeback yet. But if they're coming up, there's nothing wrong with just calling a quick little hope. Like, we've all done them.
Yep.
We should be doing them in training, practicing our little, you know, heat and comeback drills. So you can give them a little something and then you shut them down because it's a performance. And it's like, that's a nice way of saying, like, rewarding, yes, that's right. If you cheer for the babyface, they can fight back, but not yet.
Exactly.
Not yet.
Exactly.
And then that's playing the dance of hoping that when the time comes that they still come up for you. but you've got
Yes.
a better chance of getting that if you give them those glimmers of hope. Whereas if you just keep that door shut the whole time, exactly like you said, eventually they'll just go, well, we might as well go get another drink, boys, because clearly they're just doing their own thing.
Yeah. And that's a lot of the times where I think that's where the whole the you hear the older guys complain about the younger guys, the whole get my shit in thing. Like your shit doesn't matter. The crowd matters. If the crowd are ready for us to go now, we should go now, because that's what we're here for. We're not here for ourselves. As much as we love what we do and we wouldn't we sacrifice so much to do this stuff, we're doing it for the people that are sitting in the crowd, because without them, we're just idiots rolling around a ring in an empty arena.
Yes. And I guess it's having the awareness as well. Like, if you've got a match, if you've got something planned where you have everything, you might be able to say, hey, we were going to do this whole spot to build to your comeback, but they're ravenous for you already. Let's go.
Yeah.
But then you might make the call of like, they're ravenous, but they're here, but we can bring them up higher. Let's just wait. But it is having that wherewithal to listen to the crowd and be able to respond, because you might jump ahead, you might drop something out, you might cut something, you might add something, and it's where like less is more, as they always say, but less is more doesn't always translate to just literally do less.
How long were you in like working matches, working shows where you felt like you could feel that in the crowd, where you felt like you could read the crowd too? No, they're not quite ready yet. They're not quite ready yet. Now we go.
I had the advantage of when I started wrestling at PCW, when they were running a show every single week. So in my first couple of years, I was afforded the luxury of working every week, which meant I think it helped a lot of us get a lot more repetitions in and build a few of those little natural instincts. But I wouldn't say the downside, but I suppose the flip side of that was also that because it was the same crowd, you could very much work to what they liked, because it was the same demographic, the same location. And PCW is a little ways away from like the city, where like your Renegades or Wrestle Rock or MCW run. They're in like their own little spot. And so they've cultivated, while many people will travel, they do have like their core fan base that are loyal to a T and show out. When we were running shows every single week, you'd see at least half that crowd would be there every single week. Every Saturday night, they were making their way out to come and see our shows. So you did learn what they would respond to, which I guess in essence is similar, but it was also that helpful thing of, I know that the crowd will respond if we do X, Y, Z. So we want, if we want this reaction, we do this. If we want that reaction, we do that. And 9 times out of 10, you could do it. And that's not a bad thing. That's just knowing your audience, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's smart to know your audience.
No, absolutely. It's no different to like, WWE knowing their audience and what they want, right? And like an AEW audience knowing what they want. If you give the audience what the other one expects, they might go for it, but they might not. But you know what your audience is coming here looking for. And it was very.
It's also like when it's like when you're on some shows and the first 2 matches come out back and you're like, what do they like?
Yes, very that.
It's not like what you're not saying like what are they mean? It's like what are they into?
Yeah, it's not like a tell me the cheat code, tell me how to make this easy. Yeah, it's just they love when you yell at them, so go to them more. And you can go to them. That
more. Tope side, there's a crew at the Tope side in the right corner. It's so easy to work. Go and work them, and the rest of the crowd will follow them.
The magic words of "There's a Bucks night over there."
Yeah,
go to them. But I think even with that, it helped when going to other places where now you didn't have that crowd that we were all so familiar with. Yep. So whereas like for a good year or two, I knew that audience We all knew how to get the responses we wanted. So when I started wrestling in other places, other states, it wouldn't be as simple as, well, if I do this, they'll do that. So then it became a lesson of like, oh, I need to learn what this crowd likes.
Yeah.
And
I
then
wonder if they like the same thing. Whoop, no, they do not.
No, they didn't. I won't do that again. And then that, I think, over time became the art of being able to go, all right, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to do this. How do they respond? All right, I will do this. All right, they're coming up for this. Awesome, let's do that. But I think I was probably a good, trying to think if there's like a match in particular that I can look to, but I reckon it was at least a good 2 years of, again, wrestling like every single week before I really began to be able to hear and play off of it and work to it. And then obviously there's the other added layer of having the confidence on the fly to have a match plan with someone and go, we're doing your comeback now.
Yeah.
I know that we said we'd do all this, but we're not now. We're doing this. So I think that as much as learning it is one side, there is also the confidence. Because I've been in matches where people, like you'll call something and someone will go, oh, now? Yeah, now. Or you'll get backstage and they'll say, I'm glad that you called that because I was thinking it, but I didn't want to rush things. So it's also having that confidence to be the person
because
make the call.
Also, a lot of people are like the whole thing, like hurry up, slow down. They're too afraid of like, oh, maybe if I say let's go, you're going to be like, just calm down, mate. Just sit here.
Relax.
We're going to be fine. It's going to be fine. I think for me, it was like, I was lucky because while I didn't have shows weekly like you, for my first year working in the business, I was doing commentary, like live commentary. So I was watching every match on every show, like, so I could hear when what the crowd would pop for, what the crowd wouldn't for. And then for about the first 6 months, because I was so very, very lucky to have the first guy I managed on big shows was Brooksy. So I got to listen to him talking through matches with the guys in the ring, like during the show. And I'm like, so I'd pick sort of things like, why did he say, oh, that's why he said that. Put it back in your, and then I find myself like now, if I'm working with someone who's like a younger worker or a younger tag team, and we're at a certain point where I'll just like grab one of the guys and go, hey, time to go now. They're not going to get any more hot than this. Tell them to cut your heat.
Yep.
It's time. And that's purely through just listening to Brooksy, learning from when Brooksy was doing that sort of stuff, and like recognizing the same things through that learned experience.
Yes.
For you, how would you describe sort of like, because the main two places you've sort of worked this year were MCW and Wrestle Rampage. How different are they in crowds? Because you always hear like the Melbourne style of wrestling is slightly different to the Adelaide style of wrestling, is slightly different to the Perth style of wrestling. How different are they?
I think Adelaide, I've been lucky. I've worked a few different companies in Adelaide. Obviously, predominantly Wrestle Rampage, which is my second home. But the Adelaide crowd is very much a crowd that has come to be involved. Very rarely have I like wrestled in Adelaide, and you need to teach them. You know, sometimes you might work a crowd where they kind of they're not sure what they can do. They don't know if they can yell yet. They don't know when they can clap. But an Adelaide crowd is often very eager to be involved. You know, you come out and you're doing the come on baby, I'm the baby face, they go woo and they cheer. And if you come out and you snarl and you're being the bad guy, they go, oh, that's the bad guy, boo. You know, they don't want to be worked for. You know, they're there to give. They want to be involved in the show. They want to cheer, they want to yell, they want to chant. So if you go to them, they'll come right back at you. Which is a pleasure to work, because it means that everything everyone wants to be involved in things. Like the guys go out there and want to put on a good match, and that crowd want it to be a good match. So when they have moments where they want the crowd to come up, they come up, and all those bits and bobs. But I do find that Wrestle Rampage, while they're an audience that very much just enjoy entertainment and pro wrestling, they are a bit more of like a professional wrestling crowd. You know, I can go out there like I did on the last show where I wrestled Jesse Lambert, and we did very much like a WWE style match. You know, it's a bit more shtick than it is spots and whatnot. A bit more focused on the moments than the moves. And they loved it. But then at the same time, you can have Tommy Knight and Corn Dog go out there and have a very like Japanese style heavyweight fight, and they still love it because they're just there for wrestling. So they will really take whatever you want to give them and come up for it. And I think when you look through the lineage of what Wrestle Rampage is and has been over its lifespan, there's probably a reason for that with the people like a Jag, like a Damian Slater, like a AJ Istria, who have brought up that or cultivated that fan base. And then with MCW, I feel that the difference is that we have built an audience, especially over the last couple of years, that are very much there to be entertained. In the same vein, I think that they want good wrestling, but I think it is a bit more skewed to that kind of entertainment side of things, more than it is like your pro wrestling crowd. But at the same time, I think that we have enough variety that if you give them something and it's good, that they can get their heads around it without being like a crowd that's, you know, arms folded, impress me, show me your good wrestling.
Yeah.
You know, which I feel that some crowds became for a while there. You know, they were coming for indie wrestling. And unless it was 15 minutes of insane spots and kickouts, they were like, meh, I don't care for this. Whereas I think now, over the last couple of years, with the effort we've put in and the stories we've told, that we've managed to kind of have an audience that are built for the product that we want to put out, I think would be the best way to phrase it. So I think Wrestle Rampage have that more of like a professional wrestling audience, and MCW have a bit more of that like entertainment side of things. But at the same time, I think why I enjoy both so much is both just have a crowd that want to be involved, which makes it so much fun to work.
Yes. Yeah. It's I 100% get what you mean when you walk out to it, and you can feel it when you walk out into a crowd and there's one of those just impress me. And it almost makes you not want to. Like, just fucking enjoy the show. Shut up.
It's never made it. It's like the before the main event we need a cool down match. I've always thought that was the dumbest thing, because I've never gone to a wrestling show and thought, I've watched so much good wrestling, I need some bad wrestling before I watch more good wrestling. No, I'm just giving me more good wrestling.
Yeah.
That's what
I mean, I do. Yeah, I do. I do see the whole thing about like a burnout. You can burn out a crowd during a show, whereas like that's like not so much a cool down match, but like I tend to book my shows where like the match before Inter will be a really hot match, because you'll send them into Inter, and so they've got the Inter to sort of cool down and get back into it. Then the match after Inter is sort of like, welcome back, here we go, sort of. Like.
And there needs to be that ebb and flow, right? Like you might go, so like rather than go, right, we'll put out a really great match, and then we'll put on these guys who, you know, won't be very good and it'll bring the crowd down, and then the main event. Maybe you put on the big, you know, you're going to have a 20-minute, you know, match, it's a big blow-off match, so you know it's going to go hard, and then maybe that's where you do a segment or something, and then you do like a nice match. Maybe it's a bit more of a comedy-based match, or just something that's a bit quicker. It's going to be over in 8 to 10 minutes, a bit more simple, not a lot of kick-outs, fairly straightforward, more story-based, whatever it might be, so that the crowd have a moment to breathe while still being entertained and sucked into the show. But then by the time the next big 20-minute near-fall feud match comes on, they've had a moment just to catch their breath a little.
Yeah. Well, it's like people always talk about, like, saying the main event being the most important match on the show. And I was like, look, as far as I'm concerned, there are like 3 important matches on the show. Like, really important matches to me as someone who, like, overall constructs a show. That's your opener, your match going into enter, and your main event.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like the three tent poles of your show. Like,
Well,
if we call what we do a sequence, if we call what we do it like a circus, they're the tent poles that hold the canvas up. So, like, I always like there were young guys that would come in. For example, there's a guy called EC Diamond, and I knew he had a tremendous amount of upside, but he was really, like, young, hadn't really had a lot of, like, stuff. And I remember pulling him aside, going, "I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but you're probably going to be my opening match for the next 6 months, because I know you're the guy that's going to get everyone into the show. You're my Rey Mysterio." Because I always equate it to, every time I used to watch the whole, through the 90s, the WCW pay-per-views, always opened with a cruiserweight match.
Yep.
It was always like Ray against Psychosis, or Ray and Hoovy, or Hoovy and Psychosis. It's always something like that. And that I always equate that into getting people into a show and get them excited. Oh, this is what fucking wrestling is, sick. And then you take them on that tour through, okay, you saw that awesome shit. Now here's some other stuff. Here's some little bit of comedy for you. Here's a comedy match. Here's a, like you said, the different variety, different flavors of ice cream. If you can get them all, if your show can be a Neapolitan ice cream, that's great, because you're giving somebody, they mightn't like Uber Lucha, but they like the comedy. Or they mightn't like the comedy, but they like the big meaty men slapping meat. Yeah. Bumping meat. You know what I mean? It's like, if you can get a bit of a buffet for everybody, that I think is your best recipe for success. I'm just talking about food right now, because this is what happens when you go on a diet for long enough.
No, but it is that. No, the crowd's never going to be more hot or invested than when the first match goes out, because they've come for wrestling and now they're finally getting wrestling. So that opener is everything. It's not a bad spot to be in, because if that opener falls flat, everyone else has an uphill battle. Whereas if that opener knocks it out of the park, it's easy, because that crowd has been rewarded.
Yes. MCW for this whole year really has. I don't want to say a turnaround, because they were good. They were good, but there's just been a massive uptick, say this year, over just seems like the whole product. What do you personally attribute that to?
Me entirely.
Fair. And moving on.
Moving on. Next question. I think MCW, like all of us did, I think because COVID hit us all so much, and right when Australian wrestling was like lightning in a bottle, independent wrestling in general, but we were on fire. We had all the eyes on us. Someone was getting signed every couple of months. It was insane. And then COVID kind of took it all away. And you can't book or manufacture lightning in a bottle. And I think that coming out of COVID, especially with how hard it hit us in Victoria, I remember it being very hard to put ideas together, because we would be coming out of lockdown and we'd say, right, the plan for the next 3 shows is you're going to do this. And we'd do match 1, and then we'd be back in lockdown. I remember we did Ballroom Brawl in 2021, and that's the one that Mitch Waterman won. And the plan was for us to go into a little feud. We did a match on the show afterwards, and it was going to be a way to properly introduce me because I'd appeared sporadically, but Mitch was kind of needed someone to occupy him after winning the ballroom. So you put him with me, and we were going to do like a little feud. So we did the first match where he was still wrestling in the Brat Pack attire. And in the match, I ripped the jersey off of him. And we kind of framed the match around the fact that until I started peeling those layers off of him, I had the upper hand. And the idea was this beginning of Mitch needs to go from who he was to who he will be to be able to become the guy who will challenge for the world title. We did the first match, and then we were locked down again. And then I'm very sure the next show we got to run was like the show before he won the title. Because we went from having a year's worth, not me, but Mitch having a year's worth of story to play with, to now you've got to tell that story in 3 shows. And I went from, I'm going to do this, to, all right, it's gone. And then we came up with a different idea that we'd put all the bits and pieces together for, and then the shows never happened. So I think we were like at a dead halt in terms of momentum and everything. So that when we started up last year, it was a lot of working out all the kinks, getting the rust off, whatever expression you want to use, and a lot of trying to work out what pegs fit, what doesn't. Does this work over here? Does that work over there? Should they be a face? Should they be a heel? Should these guys be a team? Should they be separated? And then I think this year is when it all started to click together. All the pieces started to be in the right place. And we're fortunate enough, like we were discussing before, Delta caught fire like nobody's business. The Perea as well got on a hot streak of doing their feud off the back of turning on Rocky. I had the Sacrament, which was something different and unique, and was lucky enough that it caught on. So we have all these things that started to work, and then I think that they trickled out into things all year. And even little things like having Nick Armstrong on shows. And just this little thing that was like, this will be a funny thing for the night. Oh my God, they absolutely love it. Let's do it again. So I think that over the year, by the time we got to Ballroom, I feel like we'd worked out all these things that had worked. Took a chance on things, the ball was rolling, and it was just like full steam ahead to the end of the year. Because, I mean, Brooksy and I did the first match, and then I don't think anyone expected it to end in like 7 minutes. Because it's Adam Brooks, right? I'm sure a lot of people looked at it and gone, they don't like this Sacrament idea. They're killing it off. They didn't expect Adam Brooks to be in effectively a squash match on his first show back since America. Then we do the second one, and I'm sure everyone was like, all right, here we go. This is where Brooksy wins. And I beat him again. So like you said before, now you've gone from, we know how it goes, to, fuck, I want to see what happens next. So by the time we got to Fight to Survive, and all Brooksy and I did was turn a corner and look at each other, the crowd wanted it. They want Brooksy to get his revenge. They want him to get back at me. So we can tease it and build to it. And then by the time we get to Endgame, and we have the payoff, it's now being rewarded for you waiting since like March, and it's now December. And so I think that this year everything took off because we had these things that we had taken a chance on, or like we were saying before with the Sacrament, put all our effort and energy into, to going, we believe this will work, let's give it everything, and we're rewarded for putting that in. I don't know if Jarvis had ever wrestled on an MCW show before this year. And now is like one of the people you expect to see every month. So I think what we've done over the years, we've found like the roster, who you expect to see on an MCW show. And it's not just Slex and Adam Brooks. Who else will be on that show? And I think because we've tried to tell these stories and tried to have these hooks and reasons to come back, you have from top to bottom characters that you can follow, characters that you can enjoy, people that you want to come and see. Because you know when you come back next month, I love watching Slex wrestle. I can't wait to see what he does next month. And I've really come around on, seeing Nick come out as Nick Legstrong or whatever it might be. So I think that this year has been a big year of we're going to invest in things and hope that it pays off, and it has up and down the board.
Mm. Yeah, it's also good that because for a while there it felt like, and I know this was a criticism from a few people, that MCW were relying a lot more on interstaters than actual Melbourne workers. And it feels like in the last quarter of the year, that's sort of come around now, where there's a lot more Melbourne-based local wrestlers on MCW than there are your interstaters, which only bodes well for, because people will naturally get behind the people that are their home, even if they're a heel, they'll still, okay, he's one of us, even though he's a dickhead, he's one of us. And it's good to see now that they were patient and they took their time in going, oh, well, that guy is not quite ready, but when he is ready, we're going to put him on the shows more, and then you will actually appreciate him because he's ready for prime time. I always like saying, when you're ready for prime time, then that's the best time to do it, because if you give, it's always hard to make a good second impression. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you go out there the first time and you're not quite ready, people are going to remember that for the next time. They're always going to go, oh yeah, he's a lot better now, but wow, you should have seen him when he started.
No, absolutely.
It's good to see that through that stuff like what are they called? Mixed group.
Oh, Shadow Alley.
Shadow Alley, thank you. It's good, stuff like that with those guys coming through and starting to get more reps on the big shows, and like you said, Lockie before they even started the year wasn't even anything, and then I'm having a terrible blanking name. Robbie Parker? Robbie Thorpe, thank you. With his whole thing with Rocky on the last show that will be on Fight this Saturday, I think it is. It comes out. So if you do have Fight Plus this Saturday, Endgame will be live on Fight. So go and check that out, because that is the denouement of Edward Dusk and Brooksy, it's a match I can't wait to see. I've seen the highlights, and I've had Jeff tell me it was a great match, and I heard Welshie tell me that the show overall was one of the best ones. That's the one thing I will say. It's because I get to watch these shows on tape, on delay, if you will, because of where I am. But every time that the Jeff or Welshie go, I seem to get a message after that was one of their best ones yet. The next show, that was one of their best ones yet. And it's so good to hear that stuff coming from these guys, because these guys have watched years of MCW shows. So, and a lot of the times, especially Welshie, if he doesn't like something, we're like, yeah, it was okay. But for him to go and go, this is one of the best shows. Yeah, top to bottom, I thought that show was. It's a credit to the roster. It's a credit to the guys behind the scenes that are putting it all together as well. Who do you see from some of the younger guys coming through? I say younger guys, you're young yourself, but some of the sort of the newer people coming through that could in say 12 months, 24 months, they'd be talking about Jarvis, talking about like yourself, talking about Delta even.
I think even though one of them's been around a while, I think the Shadow Alley boys are a very good shout. One of them hasn't been around as long. I don't know which one Nick refers to as crack and which one is pop or whatever.
No, it's Snap. The Snap and Crackle, because he's the pop.
That makes sense now, doesn't it? But I know that they're a bit interchangeable to him. But Blake Malik, who has not been around for, I think, just over a year now, he's been around. So he's still very new and still learning. But when you're under wrestling in a tag team with his partner, Ryan Rampage, who has been around for a very long time, it's a great person to have next to you to help you along while you're still trying to work out what you do and how you do it, especially when you're on a stage like an MCW, where there isn't a lot of room for error.
No.
The Thornbury show isn't the show to try something and see if it works. And obviously being paired with Mick as well, who is one of the best wrestlers in the entire country. It's a tremendous little circle to learn within. And then I think of Lucky O'Leary is another one who has nothing but lots of upside, as well as the Mongrels, or the Sexy Greek Boys, are another young tag team that I think know what they do and how they do it. I think there's a few little pieces that they're still putting together, but are a solid tag team that once they kind of work out all those little bits, I feel like they've got all the pieces, and once they start working out where those pieces go, they're going to be a tremendous asset to any company that they're in. And I think even though they're both starting to show up a bit more frequently in recent months. Jake Taylor and Robbie Thorpe are both two guys that I'm very glad that we have in our roster, because they're both very big boys. They've got looks that are very different because they're bigger guys, but they can both move. They're not slow or, broken down or out of shape. They're both incredibly athletic, in incredibly good shape, and can go. So I think having people like that on our roster not only gives it more depth, but a lot more like longevity and options of the more, again, like we have this year, right? Invest in all these people and hope that it returns back. And we've got such a good little plethora of people that we haven't even fully utilized yet, but are floating around off to the peripheral.
And that's got to be hard. It's got to be hard, but it's also got to be like motivating to know that like I need to be at this certain level because there are people that are ready to raise up to that. Like if I slip up or if I'm not up to par, there's somebody here just waiting for a chance. That's got to be like motivating, and also like it's got to feel good, but it's also motivating to keep on your game.
It is, and it's something that I definitely have always personally kind of looked at as that little bit of a challenge. Not someone that wants to be told that was great. I want to be told if it was great, awesome. But what else? Or the very least myself be able to go, that was good, but this could have been better, or this needs work, or next time I think this should be that. Always room for improvement, right? And I think that given where, like, if you rewind a year ago, where someone like myself was, or someone like Delta was, where we were kind of in the structure of MCW, we were there, but we were just kind of in the fray.
Yeah.
Whereas now we've both main evented shows and been like heavy features of our brand all year long. So it does show you how quick it can change. There's a reason why like a Slex and Adam Brooks have remained in the positions they have for so long, and it's because of how talented they both are. And that's kind of like the bar you've got to live up to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's incredibly motivating, because you've got to kind of remember that, you might be able to sit on the mountain and go, I'm in the main event. I am the big storyline of the show. This show is about me, but next month it's not. And you're right off the mountaintop again. So it's not as much as it's like I'm up on the top of the mountain and I have to fight everyone off to stay up here. It's that I've already been thrown off, so I have to climb back up it as fast as possible, while everyone else is already trying to get up there as well. Mm-hmm. Shown exactly by what you said at the start. Like, I'd love to sit here and say nothing could top what I've done in MCW, but Delta has, right?
Yeah.
And that just shows you that, like, to pat myself on the back, I'm very proud of the year of work that I put together. But it can still just not be enough.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy to sit here and go, but this, but that, excuses. Or I can go, okay, what's next year look like? What can I do
What
better?
do I need to do? What do I need to do to raise that level?
You got to stay hungry. You've got to keep challenging yourself. If you talk to anyone, spoke to someone on the weekend that was like, but that's why I like doing this, because it's a new challenge. It helps me get better. There's always something else you can add, always something you can do differently or do better. The easiest way to put it is, I'm not main eventing WrestleMania for the WWE title, so there must be something I can do better, right?
Yeah. It's also like, because I was just thinking about it then while you were talking, it's also a credit to a lot of the roster as a whole, that you can have like sold out compelling shows over the course of a full year, when you've got the champion that you have that isn't in the country for 98% of your shows.
Mm.
Really, because how often has Buddy been on? What, twice last year?
This year, I think we've had him for 3 shows this year.
3 shows.
Wrestled Mitch, wrestled Tommy, and I feel like there's one I'm missing, but I could be wrong.
So we'll say 2 or 3 shows, and for you to have that and still be like as hot as you are as a product is a real, like, it's a boon to you guys. And especially when, like, I say it hasn't really been like showcased that much either. The Intercommonwealth, before it got involved in, because it wasn't really like it was a part of the Jarvis Delta story. It sort of got involved in the Jarvis and Delta story, so it wasn't like the driving force of the story. That wasn't even really focused on a hell of a lot during the year either. So it was basically like it was driven on the whole year of MCW. It was more driven on stories than it was championships, which is different to a lot of feds.
But that's, I think, like we were saying before, right, is that it's one of those things, like, again, we were talking about it before. We might have been talking about it off camera, but when you try to overanalyze it or try and find a way to make yourself feel smart because you understand the inner workings of wrestling, you forget the basic stuff because you're so deep in it. And it's, when people say, oh, but it's the world title should main event. Why is the world champion not in the main event? Why are they in, a tag match or whatever? And it's because if you book a championship to be important, it becomes important. Like Gunther holding the IC title is a great example. That championship was well and truly in the mud for many years. It was literally like, we'll just throw it on someone and see what happens. Whereas now, you could argue that it's just as important as the world title because it's been treated that way. And that's where, like, you've got to remember that it's a device to be used in the story. It's only as important as you make it. So that's where the Delta Jarvis feud becomes big enough that, like you said, it brings the IC title into it to, I don't want to say raise it up, that's the wrong term, but to bring it into this story because this story has grown so important that now it kind of needs this. So it wasn't so much it was just a key to help a angle of the story, if that makes sense. It was, because it was, like we spoke about before, the women's title was what meant something to Delta, and the IC title was something that meant something to Jarvis. So how do you get Delta to get her comeuppance on the person who took the most precious thing from her? You give him something just as precious so she can take it away from him. So the championship isn't just existing to say, here's the champion. It's existing to facilitate the story, which is what you should do. You can do, an open challenge for a title or something like that to add some stakes, to say, right, on the next show, such and such will have an open challenge, and it'll be for the title, and you go, "Ooh, who will it be?" But you can only do that for so long before you need a little something more. Because if all you needed to do to make someone important is give them a belt, we'd have a very different landscape of wrestling. But it's not that simple. You need to give it more than just, well, he's champion now, so cheer for him.
Oh, it's not that easy. Shit. But do you I know that it's sort of been your baby and part of your you helped create it and all of that business. But were you ever sort of tribulations when starting the whole Sacrament thing that, hang on, I might get pigeonholed as, say, like a hardcore wrestler from just doing this? Because primarily that's what the matches are on the show. They're different because it's different style, a different thing. But when you break it down, it's like no DQ, no, like that style of. Were you ever worried that you might get pigeonholed into that, where it was like, oh, he's a hardcore worker?
A little bit. Not in the grand scheme of things. Like, not to the point where I thought, other promotions would get in contact, like, hey, we want you to come over and have a hardcore match here now. So it was something that I was worried about might be like, I think more limiting than pigeonholed. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That's sort of what I meant. It's a better way of saying it.
But I know what you mean in regards to like that people would just go, oh, he does hardcore wrestling. Okay, that's what Edward Dusk does.
Yeah.
But I was worried that it would be that people would forget that I can do more. But I think the advantage was that I know that even without the gimmicks, without a hardcore match, I can give you a great match. I think, and having done it in MCW, the match I had with Mitch, the match I had with Emin for the semi-finals of the Ascension tournament last year, are both some of the matches I'm very proud of. Getting to wrestle Slex for Tamashi. So I think I had that confidence in myself that even if I started to get pigeonholed, all we'd need to do is give me a chance to go, oh, that's right, he can go. And I'd be able to remind everyone. So it was having that like confidence in myself. But there was definitely that worry that it might happen. But I think that what not only me, but I think all the people I got to work with Adam, with Carlo, with Wake, was that we always still tried to make it like a good wrestling match. Like it wasn't just gimmicks and plunder.
Yeah.
Because you can do like I am a fan of like hardcore deathmatch wrestling. There's a limit to which my fandom extends, but I think that there is a beautiful way to do it. The way the entire wrestling world stopped to talk about Hangman and Swerve is a great example of like when you let it still be about moments and a story, that everything you do can resonate a lot further. Or one of my favorite matches is...
It still wasn't a Texas death match though, and I'm putting it out there. We're still not a Texas fucking death match.
It wasn't, but getting rid of the pinfall before the 10 count is a smart idea because it makes everything feel so slow and awkward.
I just don't...
I know.
I can't agree.
Of the old ones, the one that James Storm and Chris Harris have in TNA is like phenomenal, but you can tell that the crowd, even the first couple that AEW did, you can tell that crowd is confused why there's so many 3 counts and the match isn't over.
Yeah.
It's annoying. Maybe you could just give it a different name and be like, this is our version of that, because it's basically...
It's a last man standing death match is what it is, basically.
But Texas deathmatch sounds far better. So
yeah, but neither of them are from fucking Texas either. That was another thing that annoyed me. It was the Virginia death match. And that's fine.
Cowboys are Texan enough. But yes, Triple H and Cactus Jack at the Rumble in 2000. One of my favorite matches of all time is straight up just basically just a death match. I say it all the time. Triple H is a death match wrestler. He's just done a very good job of hiding it. But there is there is that balance of, you can have violence, you can have shock and awe, but you need those moments and that story to accompany it.
Yes.
The analogy I would draw when talking about them is, you want it to be a horror movie, not a slasher
Snuff film.
or a snuff film, right? Like, a horror movie to me is not a movie that jump scares me for 2 hours, right? Because you can jump scare someone and that's not horror. There's no art to that. You can do one here and there, and and you can utilize it as a tool. That's fine. But if your movie is just jump scares, to me that's lazy, because you're going for what will work. You're in a cinema. If you make a loud enough score sting, it's gonna scare you because you're in a cinema, right? Same thing. If you have a wrestling match and start, cutting someone with a knife, yes, it's going to get a reaction because it's insane. But then the inverse of that is like a horror movie where you can build suspense, build that unsettling feeling without doing anything. You can watch it's the old Alfred Hitchcock bomb under the table thing, where it's the suspense that the audience knows something's going to happen, but the characters in the film don't. And that's where your elevated heart rate comes from. That's where the fear comes from. And then when I think you translate that into wrestling, that's what good, hardcore deathmatch wrestling is you can get so much out of anything. But one of the spots I've done, I think, in every Sacrament match is the paper cut spot, which effectively is just sleight of hand and shock and awe, but works every time because of how it looks. And you build to it, and you give it the weight and the drama that it deserves, and then there's the payoff. Whereas if I just walk in and stab him with something, the crowd will go, ah! And then in 2 seconds later, they go, well, he just stabbed him. What's going to happen now?
Yeah. It's like, to your point, one of my favorite scenes in any movie is like the opening scene of Inglourious Bastards with Christoph Waltz in the...
Great example.
Yeah, because he knows that they're there, and you just don't know what he's going to do at any point. And he's just milking this guy for information without actually doing it, and building up the tension on him.
That in itself, if you look at it like as a wrestling spot, right? That scene, I think, it's like 15 minutes long, and they shoot all the people hiding under the floorboards at the end of the scene, and they move on. And it's like 2 minutes of this 15-minute sequence. But that 15-minute sequence builds all the way up to that moment that you know is going to happen. And I feel like that's the same kind of logic that you should take to, like, if you're going to do hardcore wrestling, you should make those moments matter. Like, there's little things you can get away with that people are desensitized to. Like, if I hit someone with a cookie sheet, the crowd knows that it's probably not going to finish the match. You need to escalate things, but you need to build to that moment. Because if you just go all out, it's not going to... And it works even if you take all the weapons away. If the very first move we do in a match is I just pick you up and hit a tombstone pile driver, we're very limited on where we can go from there. Maybe really good wrestlers and a good story or a good match can work it out, and that's cool. But not everyone can. And that's where I think, coming back to your question of like being pigeonholed, is I think because we all, myself and the people I got to work with, made an effort to go, this needs to be more than just, we're the hardcore match on the MCW show, so we'll do all the hardcore stuff. Like, no. We're still going to tell a story. Because I can tell you the story of every one of those matches. Because they all have one, whether it's right and easy to understand, or if it's a bit more subtle and nuanced, there's a story through all of them. And it's not just, I'm going to whack you with some stuff, and then I'll put you through a chair, and we'll go home. Like, no, we're going to have a lot more through there to earn those moments.
Have you ever had, because I was just thinking about it then, have you ever had another promotion, because you're talking about worried like other promotions might say, oh, you're the deathmatch guy. You ever had any of them ask you to do a Sacrament match on their shows?
Thank God, because I was ready to... When we started doing it, and I started seeing people I think it might. No, it couldn't have been when I worked wide bay because that was before we did any.
I was going to say I would never ask you to do that. So
I think it might have been when I did. It was when I did Tamashi against Slex, and I remember there being comments asking, "Will this be a Sacrament match?" Which was my cursor of like, this is working, but also my thing of like, I'm going to have to prepare just in case someone tries to do it. And how do I politely say, absolutely not, get out of here, never ask me that question again.
Yeah.
And luckily, no one ever has.
Yeah. I mean, the only way around it is like, look, do you have the production that MCW have? Can you do the same things that they do? If you can't, then I'm not going to cheapen this idea by doing it. Yeah. It's why I would never ask you to do that. Because I know it's sort of like, for me, that's like somebody else's IP.
It is. It's very much, that's the MCW Edward Dusk playground.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this off mic, but separating like universes as companies, and it's something I always try to do. And so I think doing things like the Sacrament was a good way to do it, or doing things like different sets of gear. Like I've got different versions of gear I used to wear for different promotions to denote it's a different Dusk.
Okay.
So like when I started wrestling at MCW, while I was still wrestling at PCW quite frequently, I was working as a face in PCW. So I kept wearing the gear that I used to wear all the time there. And I'd gotten new gear made for working MCW. And I used that in my head as like, I have all this new gear. And I will wear that at MCW to show that this is this version of the character. I've got this jacket. I've got these tights. I've got my mask. At PCW, I don't have that jacket. I don't have a mask at all. I have different tights. I look different. And 1 in 10 people might care, but in my head, that was my way of like changing it up. And then the Sacrament became that thing as well. There was only one booking where I did specify up front, don't want to do any hardcore stuff. I don't want to do anything that could be skewed as doing a Sacrament. And they were like, no, wasn't even going to ask it. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't even think I said anything like that to you, did I? Just come up and work Bobby.
And I think we hadn't even started it yet, which asking me to come up and work Bobby is one of the worst things you could ask a person. So
I know, I was already asking a lot.
You were. I would have preferred to have something.
I'll get a message about this. I'll get a message about this for sure.
Good.
What did you mean by that? Nothing, Bobby. I love you.
What did we mean, Bobby? What did we mean?
So we've rounded out 2023. Is 2024 something like you just want to build on this more, or are you looking to spread your wings further, or are you looking to like where do you think the especially in MCW, where do you think the character that Edward Dusk can go from here? Because they surely there might be I don't say surely. I suppose, are you worried at all that it could be like, oh, we've jumped the shark at a certain point?
No. I think that what the Sacrament has done is it's given me in the character like a world to play in. But in that same vein, I've kind of been in my own world off to the side. You know, like we were saying how, you know, Delta and Jarvis's story started with Jess and Delta, and then evolved into Jarvis and Delta, which evolved into Jarvis and Emin, which came back to Delta and Jarvis. I've not had that because I've been in my own little bubble. Anyone that's wanted to fight me has had to come into my bubble. Whereas that can only go so far before the question, I don't think, becomes what happens to Edward Dusk next. I think the question is, what does MCW look like with Edward Dusk actually in it, and not off on his own little adventure?
That's a good point. How was it working with someone like Carlo? Because I was just thinking about it then. It was like, you say you sort of in your own little bubble. You didn't really face a hell of a lot of people that were MCW regulars in the Sacrament. Like you got Brooksy, but then after that it was like Carlo for a couple of shows as well.
Yeah.
So it was very much like you were drawing people in from outside.
I think it became a good challenge as well, like we were saying before, right? Carlo is great. I don't think there's any debate on that.
I was kind of hoping he'd become more of a regular there too after that, because he had a really good showing with those matches.
It was very proud of that match, to be honest. It was one of those ones where no one ever sets out to have a bad match, but one that I've looked back on and kind of really thought like it went above and beyond what I thought it would be. I remember watching it back and thinking like this is actually very good. We've done a really good job.
This is actually very good.
And normally I can pull myself apart on anything, whereas that was one where I kind of actually was happy with it. But the challenge of it'd be easy to grab an Emin or someone who is known to the crowd and is hot and bring them in and say, right, now Dusk, now you have to go up against Dusk in his world where he's a god. And, we can go from that. But there was a challenge in saying, well, they're going to grab Carlo, who no one's seen for like 10 years and doesn't wrestle all too regularly anymore. We're going to bring him in, give him a spot in the ballroom brawl to kind of have a little interaction, and then we're going to put it into a fully fledged match. Because like you said before, the crowd might tend to go, well, we know Dusk, we're not familiar with Carlo, we're going to cheer for Dusk. Yeah. So the challenge became, for me, was we have to make sure that what we get across is this is the guy you're going to cheer for, and you're going to still boo me, even though you're unfamiliar with him. And one of the things that I really love about that match is that when he comes out, they're there, but by the end of it, they're all behind it. By the time we reach that finish, they're all behind Carlo and all against me. So we took them from being a bit like, oh, we're not really familiar with him, what are we going to do, to by the end of it, they had bought in hook, line, and sinker. So what started as like a challenge became like a nice, rewarding experience of being like, see what we can do. This is perfect. So working in was a challenge, but like easy, a great experience.
I love the fact that it feels like, and this is just my interpretation. I'm maybe thinking too much of it because I get in the weeds. I tend to get in the weeds when I think about this sort of thing. I feel like you're like the ultimate evil on the show, and the perfect foil for you is someone who is your real white meat babyface that you could try to corrupt by bringing them into your world, and then when they leave, they're not quite the same, but in a way you season them. So the people aren't thinking of him so much as the white meat babyface anymore, but like, this is a guy that's been through hell and back and survived, and he's a tough son of a bitch now. He might be like happy and smiling and all that, but the dude's seen some stuff now.
Yeah, and I think without giving it all away, I think if you go back and if you watch 3 matches Brooks and I have done and watch them probably in succession, there's a lot of little things that are in there for that exact kind of story. Not like the exact as in what you've described, but using someone like an Adam Brooks, you're effectively a white meat babyface, and bringing them in and seeing what happens when they're brought into this kind of world that does change you. But the flip side to that, and I think where it'd be easy to look at like Edward Dusk and say it's an ultimate evil, but I think there's also a side of it and I think the Sacrament is kind of proof of that, this is what you get. There isn't like a mask of I'm pretending to be this or I'm trying to be that. The Sacrament was very much like a stripped bare, like this is what I like, this is what I enjoy. It's not trying to be evil or mean. I just like this. This is where I want to be. This is where I thrive.
I guess that's what I mean by like ultimate evil. I guess I mean like sort of like somebody who, how do I describe it? Somebody who is of pure heart walking into someone who is of dark heart. if that makes sense. And just like what can I like this like you like a snake looking a mouse walking into their lair,
Yeah,
and just like, whoa, I'm gonna toy with this before I kill it, sort of thing.
very much. And I think like the Wake match and the Carlo match were very much that. Like you can lure someone in, but now that they're here and they can't leave, what happens? And with the Wake match, it was very much they get eaten alive. And the Carlo match was very much the story of someone who is strong enough and powerful enough to keep fighting. But eventually, you know, if you use that analogy, right, of the snake, you see it all the time where, like, in the wild, some kind of animal will be fighting a snake, and the snake just manages to bite it enough times that eventually that poison builds up and up and up. And the snake doesn't actually get like a killing blow. It's just eventually it's landed enough that the
Death
animal
by 1,000 cuts.
Yes, perfect. And that was very much the Carlo match. Carlo is someone who can overcome Dusk, but in this world, the longer he's here, the further and further he gets from ever getting away, because you just can't outlast him. And it's a death by 1,000 cuts, right? So then Brooksy is the bigger lasting effect, I suppose, of what that looks like. But I think there's an honesty in being, because I don't know if I'd look at a character like an Adam Brooks and say he's pure of heart.
No.
Right? But that's what.
But then I know Brooks.
But this is where like people talk about characters and say, oh, you need shades of grey, but grey is boring. You don't need shades of grey. You need like a color palette. You know, you need more to a character than just I'm the good guy or I am the bad guy. And I think that that's where characters can tell good stories, when the character is more than just the good guy or the bad guy. And I think that's where the intrigue comes from someone like an Adam Brooks wrestling someone like Edward Dusk. Because they both know who they are. And then when they come together, I think that's where that intrigue is, because Edward Dusk is very aware of who he is, what he is, and what motivates him. So nothing really changes there. Whether or not you want to label that as good or bad, you know, if you meet someone, you probably hope that they're upfront with you and tell you the truth about themselves. It just so happens that Dusk's going to be very upfront and probably tell you, look, I'd much rather be pushing you in front of a bus right now. It's not a nice thing to hear, but you might go, well, look, at least you're honest, mate. I'm going to go over there, though.
Were you, because just dawned on me now, were you sort of worried about this, because when you did like the battle, was it the Survivor match thing? When you did that, were you sort of worried about that muddying the whole universes thing that you've sort of created in MCW, whereas like the Sacrament is your thing? Were you sort of worried about crossing streams, if you would, like being in a team?
I think because of the team that we had, it worked. Because it was a group, I think between like Moretti, myself, and the Pereira, there's three parties that don't have friends. So it kind of makes sense that like if any of them are going to align with each other, it's probably these people. And then we told the story on the show of Lucky being the other guy.
Yeah.
And kind of just, we described it as he doesn't know how he ended up in this, but he's gotten caught up in it and he's too stupid to go, I don't want to be involved in this. He's in too deep, so he's just rolling with it now. So I think that we did a good job of showing that like the faces had come together, whereas the heels was kind of like mutual interest. And then we had the thread of the minute I could, I took out Brooksy. Got disqualified, I don't care. That's what I came here for. This guy had the audacity to come back after I threw him off that balcony. He could have just left. But he thought he would come back again? Nah, not today. Take him out. Remember that at any moment I will end your career. I don't care about this 5-on-5 thing. I'm done. This is just for me to remind you what I will do to you. So I think that because we had the thread that we did, it was a nice way of bringing me out of that bubble and having that little reminder of like, I don't really play with everyone else. So why is he doing it? It's just to get to Brooksy.
Because you had an end goal.
Yeah. That then ties it all back to, if he's going to come back, I want to be the one that gets rid of him forever. I have to lure him back in again. How do I lead that mouse back down this rabbit hole? Right. I'll come and attack you, and then I'll leave. Do you want to be a coward and walk away, or do you want to come fight me again like an idiot?
This is your style of wrestling is the style of wrestling that I love, and I'm not talking like the hardcore. I'm talking the cerebral style, because there are you've got like all the moves and all that. They're amazing, and I do enjoy watching them. I enjoy when somebody puts a lot of effort and a lot of thought into their matches, into their angles, into the overall like package of the character, of the motivations, and I think that's the best way to describe the motivations, because a lot of times guys like, oh, I've just got this match, I'm in this match. They don't think about, well, what's my motivation for being in this match? And that's where you're different, and where I think that I really do enjoy that sort of thing. It's another reason why I enjoy like Mick Moretti, because he does those things. Like I think it was PWA. He was in a match against Robbie, and I think he was attacking Robbie's foot, but then halfway through the match, he undid the top rope because he knew that Robbie's best weapon is coming off that top rope. And if he took the top rope away, what's he going to do to me now? And I'm just like, that's things people don't really think of all the time. But when you think of it, like, that's great fucking storytelling, and not something everyone's doing in every match.
It's what the best way I think to look at it is it should always be the discussion of who are you, who are they, what does that look like together? And I think that's how you then get a story. Because you can easily go, what are your moves? I've got a cool counter for that. And that's fine. But it's that story that resonates. And whether that story is told over a year or over a show or over one match, there should be something there. Back to our discussion about booking a show, right? You should, if it's someone's first show, they should get a payoff. So if they never come back to one again, they've been given something. If this is their 5th show for the year, they're given something as a return for coming to 5 months worth of shows. If they've been to every show for 7 years, they still might get a reward out of seeing something happen. And I think it's why me and Brooksy has worked, is because I think every time we've had a match, we've kind of done that. Where if this is the only match you're seeing, you get something out of it. If you saw the other matches, you're getting something out of this. And if you've been coming for a couple of years, you're seeing something. If you've been coming for years and years, you're still getting rewarded for something. And I think that's what you need to reward your audience. And even on that basic level of have a match that tells a story, so that audience that has gone out of their way to engage with your match will follow that story and go, oh, I understand the story you've told me. I enjoyed that. Versus, not rewarding them or treating them like they're idiots. And then they go, gee, thanks. I don't really care about the match now.
Yeah. Like if you're an angle with somebody, every show should be a chapter of that angle, but every chapter should tell a story in itself. Say episode of the season, they're going to get a little bit of okay, this is what's happening. Hopefully in that episode, they're going I want to see what the next episode says.
Yes.
What happens in the next episode.
It's exactly what it is. It's just that wrestling is like an ensemble show. It's not a one-man show. So it's not all about you. One episode might be about someone, but for the most part, it's an ensemble where we're all trying to tell our own character's story. And that's where you don't need to go into the level of like my rant about wearing different gear to denote different versions of a character, right? You don't need to think about it that deeply, right? I can do that, and that can be my thing that makes my brain work.
Yes.
And that's fine. But for the person that pays attention to that, there's something there for them to find. But at the same time, if you're not thinking about it at all, you're doing yourself like a disservice. I think of like the story you guys ran with Soul leaving Top Tier. And it didn't just happen. It was over, I think, a year's worth of shows. Of like this slow build to like, not, oh, we're noticing the cracks. And, you know, if you don't straighten up, we're going to kick you out. It was a good show of like Solomon Blackwell wanting something different. In the background, Tim and Nick were the focus. They're doing the stories, they're winning the championships, but Sol was in the background on his own journey. And so if you didn't pay any attention until he turned, you're rewarded. But if you were someone that noticed it from the very beginning, you've been rewarded every step of the way. And it's where like, that's how you should tell a story.
Yeah, and we also did the what people wouldn't maybe have noticed or known because they didn't really follow like both Wide Bay and both like Pro League. When Solomon turned to join us, it was by super kicking Gavin McGavin. At the end of him leaving us, it was by him super kicking me. So we sort of like bookended it.
You could have watched all those shows and just not picked up on it. But if you did, you're rewarded for it. So you're rewarded for paying attention.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at like wrestling over the last few years, and I think of like the Bloodline storyline and the Hangman storyline from like the start of AEW to him winning the title, they're stories where there's a lot in there because they're both very long. But there's all those little bits and pieces in there where if you pick up on them, they're all there for you to find. And that's why you see like these Twitter compilations of like, you know, these are all the hints that this has been happening or what have you. So if you're there paying attention, you're rewarded for paying attention. But at the same time, if you're just like, yay, Jay turned on Roman, or yay, Hangman won the belt, you're still rewarded because you're
still rewarded, yeah.
But if you're there going, man, I remember that Raw where Jay back-chatted Roman just that first time, or the time when he was looking at the title while Roman was holding it up. I remember those things. Or, you know, I remember Hangman, you know, when he said that he hated himself. And then you go all the way to the end and he's got his name bar that says, we're proud of you. And you have that juxtaposition, right? Like there's all those little things. And that's where, like, again, not everyone looks at wrestling for that. But without them even knowing it, they do.
Yeah.
Because cinema's the same. You know, if you learn cinema and they're like, oh, the curtains were blue to show that they were depressed. The curtains might just be blue.
Yeah.
That was what was on the set, right? But if the scene's good and compelling and invokes like a sadness, you can just be watching it and go, man, this scene is sad. But then there might be someone a few rows back going, tremendous use of blue color tones to denote that the character is sad. And wherever you lie in between those two things, you can still enjoy it, but it's all there for you if you just want to look for it.
That's like with Wide Bay and the story that we told with Bobby becoming the champion. I was able to do that angle without Bobby knowing I was doing that angle, just by putting him in positions he didn't realize he was in. And with him not knowing it, it probably worked better.
Yep. He doesn't even
because
see
he's
it
just
coming.
like, yeah, because like he didn't see it until he rocked up on the day and I said, oh, by the way, tonight you're winning the title. He's like, what? No. And I'm like, yes, you are. Why? But well, see, this happened here, then this happened here, and this happened here. So this can happen tonight. He's like, have you done this the whole year? Yes, I have. I just didn't. It's easy to not tell you because you'd Bobby it.
Yep.
So it's just, it's the thing, yeah. Stories. That's what I geek on. I guess I'm assuming it's what you geek on just by the way we're talking.
Yes.
thing. It's that to me. That's what it's. The physicality in that is amazing, and I love that too because I'm a massive sports guy, as you could probably tell. But I love stories. I love a good story. I love a good breadcrumb. I love a good reveal. All of those things.
That's what sports are too. I think it is. John Moxley talks about it in his book, where he would watch like basketball games or UFC fights and write them down because he's like, that's a good pro wrestling story.
Yes.
Because sports they're just not scripted, right? You can easily look at, when Shaq leaves the Lakers and it becomes the story of who's going to win a ring without the other. And Shaq goes to Miami and wins one with Dwayne, and everyone kind of looks at Kobe and goes, it was always Shaq. So Kobe has this almost like revenge story of getting to winning a championship on his own to be like, no, see, I can do it too.
And then winning more championships than Shaq.
So it becomes that like, that's not planned. But you could easily take the outline of that and go, I'm going to do a tag team breakup. And this is the story we're going to tell out of it. It's just going to be Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant's real life. But we're going to play it up and make it a story. Because that's all sports and stuff are. It's why I will watch the Charlotte Hornets every season knowing we're not going to win, because I tell myself and believe that maybe this will be the year, and maybe one year it will be, and that'll be the Cinderella story, right? It's not scripted, it'll just happen. But we as human beings want that. We want the story, we want the drama. It's why we're compelled to arts in any form.
Yeah, I think it takes certain people to recognize that. Like Moxley is obviously one of those sort of people. I know there are a lot of things that like I'll watch a TV show or I'll watch something like that. Like, fuck, that'd be a good wrestling story. And that little nugget will get filed away. And like they'll be like, do you know what would really work here? I saw this on this show and I thought, as a motivation, this is a cool idea. Because I think we were on one of our Wide Bay road trips. And we were talking in the car because that's all you can do in the car. Yeah. And the boys were just like, I just don't know. We don't know what we are as a group. Like we were trying to work out what we were as a group, as top tier. And I was like, well, just think of it as we are Cobra Kai. We're a group. We think we're in the right. Everything we're doing, we think we're doing right. It's other people that just don't understand that. And we think we're better than everybody else because we work harder, we train harder, so we think we're the best. That comes across as arrogant to people, and we can't help that. And we refuse to hide anymore. We refuse to. That's the attitude you have to have. That's what you have to have in your head when you're walking out. That's like, as far as we're concerned, we're in the right. We're the good guys here. Everyone else is the bad guys. We're just doing what we have to do to get ahead.
And that comes back to what we were saying about like when a character knows what they are beyond. Like it'd be very easy to just go, we're a team, we're arrogant, we're the bad guys. But then if you put it into like, no, we train together, we fight together, we work harder than anyone else. That makes us the best. But then you put it on the show and like you cheat, you take shortcuts, and you go, well, we do that because we're smarter as well. We strategize. We planned that. Do you know how many times I practiced sliding in that foreign object? Like we have it down to a T. We work harder than anyone. But then someone goes, but you still cheated. So you're the bad guy though.
Did we get caught?
With characters who are so like, why would I be the bad guy? Do you know how hard I work? So there you go. You've got a character now. It's not just, I'm the bad guy because I think I'm, it's the old every villain should think they're the good guy. Yes, but also there are people in the world.
The reasons why.
who can think they're in the right and still be like a dick. Again, if we use Kobe Bryant as an example, renowned asshole, right? Was he one of the best ever? Absolutely. Was he a good person? Depends who you talk to, isn't it? The Michael Jordan documentary.
Michael Jordan's the same, yeah.
He's a psychopath. right? Like I've never been yelled at like I have by him. Doesn't make him the bad guy, but maybe to that person, it's like I don't care how good he is at basketball. He ruined my life. I hate him.
Mm.
And then you take that, make it larger than life, and now it's wrestling, right? It's not just top tier are the bad guys who think they're the good guys. They're the bad guys who work harder than anyone, who train harder, fight better. But then when the chips are down, will do anything to win because we train so hard, we work so hard, we will not accept failure. Now you have a character that works and can live and can breathe, and it's not just I'm a heel, I'm up myself, and when the crowd yell at me, I'll tell them to shut up, or I'll give them the middle finger because I'm the heel. No, it needs more than just that.
Yeah. I remember doing this is years ago. We did a character and promo seminar with Adam Pearce when he was down. And that's when I think it clicked with me. Because he sat everyone down and sort of like, what's your character? What's your name? What's your motivations? And it wasn't until then that I really thought about it. Because like I was almost like basically just Bobby Heenan. Because that's how I started as a manager. I'm just going to do what Bobby did because I worked a treat.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until he's like, no, you've got to think about inside what your motivation is because that comes out, whether you know it or not. If you're in that mindset of that you're playing Bobby Heenan, then you're just playing Bobby Heenan. You're not being like Todd Eastman. You're being Bobby Heenan, being Todd Eastman.
Yes.
Whereas after that seminar and after the talk and like thinking about it, I'm like, okay, now I'm Todd. I know what my motivations are. I know what my motivations are. Like I will do anything I have to make sure my client wins a match.
Yes, and that's like we're saying before, right? Like you can have an in-depth backstory and all those bits and bobs that no one ever needs to know, but you knowing it helps you influence everything else. And it can just be as simple as, and I will do anything to make sure my client wins. But then you can go, okay, how far is anything?
Yeah.
And then
I remember having that conversation with Matty as well. We're on a show. And he was like, you should cower away from me straight away. And I was like, I should only cower away from you when I realize it's you and me. If I think I've got backup, I'm going to be brave as hell.
Yeah.
Because I know my guys are going to jump you.
Yeah. I have faith in them that they'll jump you and save me. And then when you realize they're not there, now I'm an
That's when I shit myself. Exactly. And that's what I think that's the key to every good manager when it comes to that. Like you've got to be brave as fuck while you know that you've got people that have got your back. Because you know if this dude faces me one-on-one, I'm dead. Like you're smart enough to know that you're dead if you're one-on-one. But I'm also smart enough to know I always have backup. And if my job is to lure you into somewhere, I'm going to be cocky. I'm going to be smart. I'm not going to be worried because you're going to be like, as a character, you know, I've got this motherfucker now. He's on his own. I don't know why he thinks he's so brave. He's no one around him right now. I'm about to kick his ass, not knowing that I've got two guys about to slide in the ring to kick your ass.
And then that becomes something you can play on. Like maybe you do it to someone who's smart enough to go, why are you so brave right now? And then they turn around and they catch the heel about to attack him from behind. Like you can play off it. I remember doing that seminar when I came up to Wide Bay and asking everyone what's their strength and what's their weakness. And the amount of people whose weakness was, when you'd say, what's your strength, what's your weakness? And they go, I have no weakness. And anytime you ask a group of wrestlers, someone will inevitably say, I have no weakness. When your character doesn't need to be you, but everyone has one. Everyone has something, right? So like if you take that for an example, you could easily say Todd Eastman's strength is he's going to do anything to get the win. And, you know, we'll do whatever is best for his client. His weakness is he's an absolute coward and will run at a drop of I will do anything for my client, but the minute my chips are down, I'm out. Because when it comes to that point, I don't care about you more than me. So that weakness becomes, maybe it's a selfishness, maybe it's a cowardice. Like, it doesn't need to be so simple, but like everyone's got one. Like you grab any character that's, unstoppable or anything, there's still a weakness you can find. Roman is a great example of, like, he's littered with strengths, but clearly has this weakness of being alone. Because when everyone leaves him, he's irrational. He wants them to do his dirty work, and the minute the Usos turned on him, he didn't know what to do because now he's lost his family. So then you go, is this guy's weakness that he just wants to have his family around, or just wants people to make him feel important? Because maybe deep down he doesn't feel important. And again, it doesn't have to be that deep. But there's
like
things
at the
you
moment
can find, and then all of a sudden it makes sense.
Yeah. There's a thing at the moment we're doing at Pro League where Tim is in a feud with Outback Adam. And Outback Adam always carries that Steve, his croc, the inflatable croc. And I said to him, we were at the back before the show, and I said to him, has anyone ever killed Steve? He's like, what? He goes, has anyone ever stabbed Steve and popped him? So I said, no, they've pile drive him, they've done that sort of stuff. So as a motivation, if we killed Steve, you would just lose your mind, yeah? You'd want to kill us. You'd want to do anything possible to get the win. I said, yeah, because that's what we're going to do. If you've got backup Steves, are we allowed to stab Steve and pop him to get that motivation out of you to okay, what happens to Adam when he's no longer happy-go-lucky Adam?
Yeah.
With his croc Steve. And so we did that, and to his credit, he played it perfectly towards the end of the match after Tim had stabbed Steve. And just going into now, because now we're in a fucking three-way in February, me, Tim, and Adam. Now we get to see what this Adam's going to be like. Just coming out of snapping because he hit me with a chair and he hits him with a chair at the end of the match and yada, yada, yada. We get to see what that Adam's going to come out like at this next match. I'm really interested to see how because for me, it's helping his character grow.
Yes.
More than this one-dimensional, happy-go-lucky, hey, everyone, I'm Outback Adam, I have a nice tush.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. I want you want to see that more. I want to see that growth in him. And you can already start to see it, which is amazing. But that's what you're talking about.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's having those weaknesses and what motivates you, and everyone's different, and it's not just black and white or one or two things, but they're those things that the character has where whether you're heel or face, they don't change, because they're what makes you a person.
Yes,
it's why I think that Shades of Grey thing became such a expression, because in wrestling, you don't want someone to be well, when I'm a baby face, I'm this character, and then when I'm a heel, I'm completely different. You want them to be the same, because most of the time when you're switching, it's because you want that character to stay the same. They're starting to boo this face, or they're starting to cheer this heel. So let's open that door or close that door. So then if we completely change the character to something it's not, they might switch their reaction on it. But if you can find ways to be that same character, but just play it a bit different, maybe a motivation that's lower down on the tier list gets a bit higher, or whatever it might be, you can have a different character now.
Well, Steve Austin never changed his character.
No.
He just changed who he was his character to.
And when he turned heel in 01, the only thing he really changed was he went from being the badass that kicked everyone's ass to now I don't want to fight and I'm a coward. I'm still stone cold. I'm still yelling at people. I'm still stunning people. I'm still drinking beer, but I don't want to fight anyone. I just want to be champion. I don't want to defend my belt. So now you have the inverse of what he was a
and
face.
Also, I gave everything to you, Vince. Why don't you love me?
And so it goes from
You're my best friend.
You're my
You're not
best friend.
friends. You're my best friend.
You're supposed to give me hugs, not Kurt hugs.
Yes.
Like, it's a great heel turn. It's shrouded by a bad time in wrestling, absolutely. But that heel, like that run, I love. I love Austin's heel run because it's so good at just being like, take everything that they loved and switch it. Not take it away, but do it differently. Because he's still Stone Cold, who was driving out trucks to torment Vince because all he wanted to do was to get back to his championship. But now he's got it, and he's gone, I never want to lose it again. What do I do to make sure I never lose it? Well, I'll befriend the guy that always thwarts me. Now I have Vince and my belt, and I can never lose again.
But he's
So
also a bully.
But because he was still Stone Cold.
Yes.
But
like
instead of
do that
picking
stuff
on
with Jim Ross and
instead of going out and beating up Undertaker because he's Stone Cold, he's like, I'm gonna go beat up Lillian Garcia.
yeah.
I'm still gonna kick
Spike.
anyone's ass, but
Spike.
I'm gonna make sure I pick fights with people I can beat.
That whole scene with him and Spike, with they were doing the petition.
Oh,
and
yes, yes.
He called Molly Holly a bimbo.
Yep.
Just the way he said, he's like, she's a bimbo. Didn't you know? I was like, you asshole.
That's it. He like screams at Lita on one Raw for like like he's still Stone Cold, but now he's Stone Colding the people we like and befriending the people we don't. So you go, oh, I don't like you now.
Yeah. Well, we've tremendously sidetracked off Edward Dusk, but I will say, what does 2024 look like for you, mate? What do you want to do? Do you want to spread your tentacles more, or is it more like you want to sort of implant yourself further in Rampage and further in MCW, or what's it sort of look like for you?
I want to keep building what we have in MCW. I think, like we said, we've invested so much in this year, not only with myself, but up and down the card. But I think that the Sacrament has provided me a very good platform. And I think it's been a very good tool to really introduce Edward Dusk to the whole audience. And I think there is a lot of things there now that we don't need to explain. And we can just start using this character to tell more stories, which is obviously what I want to do. And then Rampage, much the same. The first year I spent there was very much finding out where I fit in. This past year was finding, what that looks like now that I'm involved in that roster. And I think of what it would look like, what it looks like now that the landscape is kind of taking shape and I am a frequent person that's featured there. And what can I begin to expand and do there? And I would love nothing more than to wrestle in the places I haven't. I've never wrestled for PWA, and I would absolutely love to. I've never wrestled for Pro Wrestling League. Would love to go there. I've never wrestled for EPW, and I want to go there for the matches and the stories. I've never wrestled Mick Moretti, and he's a prominent feature in PWA. I've never wrestled Marcus Pitt, and he's someone that I think complements Edward Dusk perfectly. I would love to see what that looks like. So there's places I want to go, new experiences I want to have, but I think that this year my focus was in MCW and Rampage because that's my home and my second home. And I think both of those promotions this year have put in a lot of work to building and cultivating what they have. And I think next year is a very much one of those, all the dominoes are set up, and now it's time to start knocking them down and see what happens. I have a lot of goals for myself. I think that I was very blessed with this year being as big as it was. But like we were talking about earlier, I always want to have a bigger challenge and the next challenge improve. Like we said, I had a great year and was in the shadow of Delta. So she had a better year than I did. That means there's room to improve next year to make sure that maybe the next time we talk about someone who had a good year, but they were in my shadow. But that's only going to happen if I put in the work to get it there. So I've got a lot of goals that I'll keep to myself. I'm a superstitious person. I don't want to tempt fate. Don't want to toy with destiny. But I think that this year was the beginning of something big. And now all I have to do is take that into next year and make it bigger.
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I love talking to you. We were going to do this a couple of weeks ago and we couldn't get around to it. So I'm glad to have you on. Having Jeff and Lachlan away sort of gave me the opportunity to go, well, I still want to do a show this week. So I'll see what Dusky's doing and I'll get him on and we can have a chat because, like I said, it's like doing my own personal seminar when I talk with you, mate. And I love it to bits. For people that want to follow you, how can they do that, mate, on their socials?
They can find me on Instagram and Twitter, and Facebook. Facebook at Edward Dusk, and at Twitter and Instagram at Dusk Eternal _ or just search Edward Dusk.
Also, give him a follow because the promos he puts up from the promotions he's on are some of the best promos you'll see in Australian wrestling. He's an unbelievable talker. It's great to watch his work.
I'm humble, but I'll tell the truth. You won't find a better promo. That's my bit. I'm the best. I'm the best promo in this country, and I will argue it to the day I die.
For us, we still have our donation drive going on. Go to www. I don't know why I keep doing www. It sounds like I'm a 50-year-old man when I do that. tinyurl.com/WRA goes to the GoFundMe page. What it is, it's our 10th year, so we did a 10-hour marathon. We did that for charity. We decided to just keep that rolling until the end of the year because it's the 10th year, so we might as well roll it to the end of the year. All the money raised for that will go to Gotcha for Life when we shut it off. We have no hands in the money at all when it comes to that. That's all got GoFundMe, and we'll send it straight to Gotcha for Life after the cutoff for that. So please do go and donate because Gotcha for Life do great work when it comes to mental health in Australia. The work that they do is second to none. I'm a massive fan of what they do. We also have tinyurl.com/WRA10 shirt. It's the commemorative 10th anniversary shirt. All the profits for that go to that charity as well. So they'll go into the GoFundMe page as well. You can follow us on Wrestle Radio AU I think it's on Twitter and on Instagram, and just Wrestle Radio Australia on. I'm so good at this. See, Lachlan does all this stuff. Wrestle Radio Australia, on Facebook. Follow us here if you're watching us on Twitch. This goes live every week. It's either Thursday, Friday, or sometimes it's different, but mainly Thursdays on your Twitch, our YouTube channel, and our Facebook channel. Please do follow us on. Please do support Australian wrestling. If you're in Canberra and you haven't got tickets yet, I don't know if there's many more people in Canberra that wouldn't have tickets to that. Go to Slam tomorrow night. If you see Jeff and Lachlan, corner them, say hi. Aside from that, until next week, this is Todd Eastman, Edward Dusk. I haven't even set up me closing the show down, so that was incredibly... I did it to myself this time. For Todd Eastman, Edward Dusk, that is Wrestle Radio Australia. We'll see you next week.
Here I was, blaming AEW for feeding you chicken shit, knowing you mindless millennials would be eating it up as if it were chicken salad, when it's really been your fault all along.
Make chicken salad out of chicken shit. People is as people does, that's all there is.